Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Joining us now, our friend Frank Figliuzzi, was an FBI Assistant Director, retired, 25-year veteran as a special agent, author of the national bestseller, The FBI Way and Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killer, and frankfigliuzzi.substack.com. Sign up for a Substack. He does videos every day and writes articles. Frank, nice to see you. Thanks with so much going on. It's great to have your voice here.
Yeah, I mean, and things change literally by the minute. So, you have a discussion and you realize, nope, we need to have another discussion. So
Well, I mean, in full disclosure on the show, we pre-recorded Attorney General Keith Ellison at 9 in the morning, New York time, 8 a.m. his time. That's the only time he can squeeze in. I'm happy. And in our interview, he talks about not like butting up with the FBI, but that we were going to work on an investigation. And that gets dated by midway through the show. But first, I just want to go, what was your reaction to the shooting when you saw the video of it, like all of us?
Yeah. So I think I have some background that's relevant here. For 2 years of my career in the FBI, 25 years total, for 2 years of that, I was responsible for overseeing all agent-involved shooting investigations.
Oh.
That was my job as inspector and then chief inspector. And so I would lead teams deployed to the field and oversee all of their findings and all of that. Okay, so having said that, to answer your question quickly, when I first saw the videos, and I think I initially saw two angles, I said that this was likely not a justifiable use of deadly force.
Okay. And then, it's not, right, and look, there's the legal part that has to be developed more because, the courts do look at the facts right before we see on the video. There's other things that go on. So we don't know all those facts. In watching the video, and well, let me go back to the basics here. You were there for 2 years doing this. Can you explain what's the legal standard for when a federal officer can use deadly force?
Yeah, this is where things are going to get interesting because in my 2 years of doing that job and overseeing every FBI use of deadly force, we never found that a shooting was invalid.
Okay.
There were, and I'm going to get to this why in a second. There were bizarre cases, and this was not unusual, where we would find that it was quote unquote a valid use of deadly force, and we would admonish the agent for getting into the position in the first place, right? So two things can be true at the same time.
Sure.
You might have put yourself in jeopardy to have a legitimate fear of your life, and you might never have, you should never have gotten there in the first place. This is very common with many police shootings, by the way. Okay, so what's the standard? Pretty much the same language across the federal government and with many police departments. And it goes something like this. Deadly force is authorized when the agent believes they are in imminent fear of death or serious bodily harm to themselves or to another, period. So here's why I think people are going to really, we can do a service here in this discussion. It's not going to make people happy, but they're going to get educated. And here's the service.
Mm-hmm.
It is what I just said is very subjective to the agent on the street, right? Mm-hmm. So all he has to say is, I repeat what I just said. I felt an imminent fear of death or serious bodily harm to myself or another. And don't be surprised if they come out and say eventually, good shoot, bad situation. Shouldn't have introduced guns into this scenario. I got lots of questions on that. But the odds of the federal government saying this guy was outside the scope of his employment, it violates the deadly force policy, are slim to none.
Okay. And so does the analysis change, say, and this is for argument's sake, I don't want to get upset with me, but say shot one, the officer, whoever it is, we won't say this officer, but the officer is in front of the car and reasonably fears for their life. Just say that they fire one shot. Then the car goes by them. They're not in the threat anymore. And they fire two more shots into the passenger side. And that's what we've seen in the freeze frame here. Does the calculation change? Does the immunity evaporate from shot 1 to 2 and 3 and expose someone to liability?
This is a great question, because if we're hearing 3 shots in either in this example or any other scenario, yes, it matters that the first shot might have been good and the last 2 might have been invalid. Absolutely, it matters. I will also note that just before coming on here with you, I read both a New York Times and a Washington Post forensic examination. They went out and got forensic examiners.
Wow.
And they are both New York Post and New York Times and Washington Post are saying this guy was not in front of the car. This agent
That's
was not.
strange.
This guy was not in harm's way. And that's a huge finding. Now, I know what's going to happen. The White House is going to say these are two of the most liberal newspapers in America, blah, blah, blah. Although I'll note the Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. So who knows how this even got out. But so forensic examiners are already saying, no, he wasn't in front of that car. So the other questions that get into this, and I don't want to bore people with details, but even if I don't know if you've heard JD Vance's press conference today, but he had a White House press conference on this topic. Very rare for him, right? And he says, things like the woman was part of a much larger group that exists only to obstruct immigration operations. She's a terrorist. She committed a crime. Let's take everything that JD Vance just said as accurate for the sake of argument. You know what? It has little to nothing to do with whether this was or not a good shoot. Mm-hmm. So the question is whether you were in fear for your life or not. The fact that you don't like her, that she's annoyed you for days, that she exists to make your life miserable, has nothing to do with whether she presents a fear of death to you.
Is it relevant in the analysis when you look at the video? Only one officer has withdrawn his weapon, the one who shot. The others didn't withdraw their weapon. None were in a defensive position. They're walking around. There's a few.
Do you know why? So, Dean, do you know why? Not to interrupt, because they're not idiots. You don't stand in front. The reason why those two agents are alongside the side of the car and don't have their guns drawn is because they don't perceive this to be a guns drawn scenario. And they've been trained not to stand in front of a vehicle. And so that does matter. In a real investigation, you would interview those two agents and you would say, what were you trying to do? We're trying to get her out of the car. She's annoying us. Okay. We've been fed up with her all day and we think we're going to arrest her for obstruction. Okay. Is that a felony? Probably not. Okay. Is she a murderer? No. So would you shoot her dead? No. Can you shoot a fleeing felon? No. So this is yes, it matters what those two other agents did. And since you brought up the other agents, by the way, I will tell you that the agent who fired absolutely endangered the lives of those two other agents. Yeah. Absolutely. And I'll bet you, and Dean, I have seen this scenario. I can't get into details, but in my FBI job, I have absolutely seen SWAT operators in the FBI grab another agent and let them have it for firing near them.
Yeah. I would imagine he fired within a foot or two. If that would have rebounded off the windshield, you could have a dead officer.
Bullets ricochet. Bullets ricochet. You miss. Bullets go through things all the time. The agents are carrying very powerful rounds because they want those rounds to knock things down. They go through cars.
Did you see the one officer? I don't know if they were jolted, like what's going on. One almost fell. There was by the other cars, not immediately by the car of Renee Good, but another one. I don't know if he ducked or almost fell because they were on ice.
Oh yeah. I saw it.
My point is, they had no idea. It wasn't a situation where officers are trained. If it is a deadly situation, they're going to react a certain way. In this case, they see a woman in her 30s in the car. Yeah. Even maybe she's been harassing them in their own way, in their mind. They don't like her. They're going to go harass her back at this point. Get out of the car. We're going to talk to you, blah, 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 blah. And she tries to go away. What happens to the FBI? What's a general procedure for the FBI? Say you want to question someone. You have no warrant for them. They're not a fleeing felon, as you've said. You've not seen them just commit a crime. But you want to go talk to them because there's something you're concerned about. If they start driving away, they're not in custody yet. Can you shoot them?
No, and in fact, even DHS policy and FBI is similar. It's drilled into your head that number one, you don't shoot at vehicles. Okay, number one, because why? Well, it's common sense. A bullet is not going to stop the engine of a car. It's not unless it might be a 50 caliber that you're firing, but otherwise your handgun will not stop the engine of the car. Number two, you can, in limited circumstances, fire into a vehicle because you're shooting at a person who presents that imminent threat of death. So absent those factors, no, you kind of get out of the way. You shouldn't be standing in front of the car anyway. You're putting yourself in harm's way. And even police departments today, let's go down to your local police department. Most police departments today, not all, have very progressive policies on chase. So even a chase, not even a shooting, but unless that person, the underlying offense for which you want that person is a felony of violence, you're not even allowed to chase that person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it makes sense. It's for they're to protect everybody, the police. By the way, did you see the Washington Post? They showed the officer, the ICE agent who actually did the shooting, came around the passenger side of the car. I didn't know that till today, and was videotaping another person who I think was connected to the actual woman who was killed, and then goes around. So she's looking in the car at the two guys trying to get in. This other guy has come around and in front. And I wonder, and we're not going to know if he yelled anything, if she knew even if she knew he was there or not, like, because she's looking at these guys and maybe she sees him and gets worried and is just terrified and wants to flee. We're not going to know this, but I'm chatting with Frank Figliuzzi. But Frank, I want to shift gears to something that developed today, which is really kind of stunning. The Minneapolis Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, BCA, was going to work with the FBI. The FBI said yesterday, we're going to work with you on this. Today, the FBI said, reverse course. The investigation will now be led solely by the FBI. BCA will no longer have access to the case materials or any of the evidence. What is your reaction to this?
Well, I know. I saw it and I went, this is not good. So I'm getting asked a lot of questions about this. Number one, so again, and nuance is important here. Number one, it is fairly standard practice to partner nicely and play nicely in the sandbox with your state, county, and local folks. They just had a murder of a citizen take place in their city. They want to play with you nicely and see what happened for the ability to tell their citizens, we looked at this too. In almost every instance in my career, the FBI answer has been yes. Yeah, sure, of course. We can partner up on our interviews. There's a way to do this. You both agree that you're going to write the reports together so there's not conflicting reports, because you get killed on the witness stand if everybody does their own write-ups, right?
Makes sense, sure.
If people are saying, well, do you mean, Frank, there could actually be two prosecutions, state and federal? Absolutely. Have I seen that before? Of course. Has Minneapolis seen a state and federal prosecution before? Yes. George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd by that Minneapolis police officer, he was tried and convicted in both state and federal courts, and the investigation was conducted jointly. So I say all of that to say this is not normal. I feel horribly for the state because they were initially told it would be joint, but people are now angry at the state. Why can't they do their own investigation? It's possible, but right. It's very difficult. Imagine trying to conduct this investigation where you can't see agent body cams, get radio traffic, you can't get access to agent weapons, the agents themselves, the autopsy, because maybe the body is going to go to a federal coroner or medical exam. You've got nothing but neighbors who have phones. Right. That's not how you conduct this kind of investigation, and it's awful. Could they subpoena the agents? Good luck, because what you're going to run into is the constitutional supremacy clause. I've seen it before. If anybody's ever heard of the incident at Ruby Ridge in Idaho, Earl Weaver, a domestic terrorist group, the marshals went to grab him up in the woods on gun charges. They killed a federal marshal, and the marshals call the FBI. Here comes the FBI hostage rescue team up to the mountains. Long story short, one of the FBI HRT snipers opens fire and accidentally hits Weaver's wife, who was holding a baby. Wow. He kills Weaver's wife. Long story short, yes, the state of Idaho filed state charges against the FBI agent. But ultimately, the feds said supremacy clause, we're in charge, and you can't do this. He was within the scope of his employment. So I just want to temper people. I want to get their expectations down as to where this could go.
But on some level, doesn't it smack of a cover-up by not allowing the state? Shouldn't the right thing be for the FBI to work with the state on this hand in hand, and that so it has credibility when it comes out and lets people feel reassured there was a robust investigation?
Or of course, if I'm the agent in charge of the Minneapolis field office, under normal circumstances, I am saying to my partners at the state level, come on, let's do this together. Of course. But would I love to see the communications from FBI headquarters to the Minnesota field office right now saying, oh no, who said this could be joint? You know those emails exist, right? Or that phone call exists. Yeah, we got to get that.
Right. Look, I think it's interesting that I'm glad that you broke down as a practical matter for people, someone who worked with the FBI for so many years, because all of us are thinking, well, look, there's so much video. You can interview the witnesses. They're all in the area. They live in Minneapolis. I'm sure they're happy to talk to local police to make the case against this ICE agent. And I wonder at what point, I mean, if there's enough for an indictment, do you think the state officials go in and say, because I talked to Keith Ellison and he said, look, if there's the evidence, we're going to charge him. He still has certain privileges and immunities that he can raise in court. He has every right to raise that. But if there's enough there, if the evidence is there, we believe we can overcome the any kind of immunity or privileges, we're going to file charges. But he said, I can't tell you. We have just begun. So,
well, they've already announced, since you interviewed, did that interview, the state's already had a press conference and the state's already announced they're not doing it.
I know that's what I've heard, that they're not going to.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they're doing that to put pressure on some level. You wonder if there's like some gamesmanship going on because they go, we can make the case. I don't know. We're going to see. I wish I could talk to AG Ellison now about what's going on. And I'm talking with a friend, Frank Figliuzzi. So Frank, on another level, and this is not political. This is more putting on your hat as a counter-terrorism radicalization person. When Kristi Noem comes out and says it was an act of domestic terrorism, when the FBI says we're not going to allow you to investigate, when J.D. Vance is doing a rare press conference on his own, demonizing this woman, and the anger is building among people who were outraged by this. And on some of it seems like they're intentionally putting gasoline on the fire. I could be wrong, but it almost seems like they are hoping for some violence in response. And I ask you that not politically. I ask it sincerely as someone who studied counterintelligence and radicalization.
So I'll say the easy part first. That nothing they're doing is calming people down or uniting people. And particularly at the press conference today with J.D. Vance, a reporter did ask him, do you have anything to say that would actually help calm this down or bring people together? And not really. It's what happened, right? He yelled at the media is what he did today. He said, you're all causing this. You're causing the furor. You're calling the agent a murderer. And yeah, the New York Times and Washington Post said a forensic exam shows that he wasn't in harm's way. But the immediate coming out by Kristi Noem and concluding that she's a domestic terrorism, that she was ramming the agent, quote unquote, ramming the agent, that the agent, even the president said in a post, the agent was sent to the hospital. He's being treated and released, Kristi Noem said. The agent ran down the street to where the van ended up.
Right.
What are you talking about? So they absolutely, by coming down conclusively, let's assume that left-wing media, whatever that is irresponsible. Let's just assume for saying, hey, this is a case that's closed, man. She should never have been shot. There was no harm. But then that does not excuse Kristi Noem, J.D. Vance, and the president for coming out and saying the exact same thing on the opposite side, which is this agent, they're lying. The agent was rammed. The woman's a domestic terrorist. The definition of domestic terrorism is the use or threatened use of force or violence to intimidate or coerce a government or civilian population for an ideological purpose. This gets down to whether she was intending to violently harm this agent. And the argument that she's been annoying us all day and is part of a larger group that gets in our way is an argument against her being violent. If she was going to be violent, she would have rammed you yesterday. So right.
It's a good point. That's an excellent point. It's look, I think first of all, it's been some hell of a week. It began with Venezuela and now we're here. And the first week of the year has just aged. All the vacation that I took at the end of December is gone now. And this is a challenging time. What are you concerned? I had an expert on, Professor Pape from University of Chicago yesterday, about political violence. He's an expert on it. He's written articles and books now coming out. And he is very concerned about where we're going as a country in terms of violence. And there's no hint that the powers that be, and that's really on the right, they control everything, have any interest in damping down or bringing people together. What are you concerned about political violence going forward?
Well, you referenced it just a few seconds ago, which is that we may have an administration that simply is not interested in calming things down, but rather believes that it would serve their purpose to have violence in the streets because it's part of a potential larger plan to deploy military and National Guard in ways we've never seen before. I think that, and I'm going to sound conspiratorial here, but I'm not going to apologize for it because I'm evidence-based. Mm-hmm. I think when you hear Trump recently tell a Republican meat crowd, we better win the midterms or I'm going to get impeached. What you're talking, and a president who sells hats that say Trump 2028 or whatever the hell they say, he wants to affect the outcome of the midterms and ultimately the next election. And how does he do that? He has said repeatedly, if we have a war, you mean I can suspend elections? He said that. So he's not. I think violence suits them and serves them. That's my greatest concern.
Mine too. It's a grave concern of ours, of everyone who listens. I'm talking with Frank Figliuzzi. So Frank, to shift gears, I wanted to touch on the last few minutes. You wrote an article for Lincoln Square about the Uvalde trial. Adrian Gonzalez on trial. People remember them. I covered it slightly a few days ago with Danny Savalas, but your article really, delved into it much more. He's charged 29 counts of abandoning or endangering a child connection. 19 children were killed. First of all, you've been advocating for him to be charged, right? And others to be charged. It was like a 77-minute gap between when the police showed up and they finally went into the building. So tell us a little bit about your article.
I'll never forget the day where where I was when this happened. I spent endless hours and days on live TV explaining it, and I was outraged, as the parents are and everybody else who sees the videos of the inaction at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. Within weeks, just a few weeks, I was so adamant that something needed to happen to hold the police accountable that I started looking at Texas statutes, and the best I could find was child endangerment and child abandonment. And I have to tell you, I called some trusted lawyer friends of mine, and they didn't say I was nuts, but they said, I guess, but it's unlikely. Well, God darn it, here we are 3.5 years later. And guess what this officer is being charged with? Child abandonment. And why? They're saying they're going to argue that he knowingly left children in his care in danger, at deadly danger. And why this officer first? The trial's going on this week. We should all be trying to pay attention to it. There's too much stuff going on for the media to really cover it. CNN's doing a decent job. They've got Shimon on the ground down there. They had to change venues. It's in Corpus Christi, New Essex County. And it hinges on why this officer, one of the first officers to arrive, he's an Uvalde school police officer, not a town police officer. A woman allegedly says to him, the shooter's over there. So he's got a chance if he moves quickly to do something. That's why they chose this officer first. The chief of the school police will be second. But why should this matter to any of us? If you're looking for police accountability, which is what we've been talking about during this entire discussion, in a way, it's happening right now in a courtroom in Corpus Christi, Texas.
And we'll continue to cover it as it develops. And again, if it wasn't for the big news this week, we would have covered it because it really was one of these firsts that to see this we saw a security guard down in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, the Parkland shooting.
He was a Broward County Sheriff's deputy.
and he was a sheriff's deputy, and this was even a bigger type of situation. So, well, Frank, before I let you go, where can people follow you, and where do you want them to follow you?
Yeah, so I'm all over Substack at the Frank Figliuzzi, columns, shows. I did a show immediately after the Minneapolis shooting. Follow me there, and my website, of course, frankfigliuzzi.com.
All right, my friend. Thanks very much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Have a great